Hello and welcome to Strangers Stopping Strangers, podcast number 10. Thank you for everyone who's joining. Welcome to anyone who's new and welcome back to anyone who's returning. So today I had the pleasure of speaking to Brian Markovitz AKA Happycat, who is the owner and creator of Deadheadland. We had so much fun talking and I really enjoyed hearing his stories about his relationship with the Grateful Dead, meaningful music, and origins of Deadheadland altogether. I really tried to step up my production level for this one, and in listening to it, I'm not sure if it's much better, but I can promise you I am working on it. So today's podcast is going to go out on Monday, which is August 1st, which would have been Jerry's 74th birthday. This podcast is the first time we're playing the Jerry Garcia band. We have Don't Let Go from the Wiltern Theater on November 12th, 1990, and our final song, Morning Dew, is from Las Vegas, the Sam Silva Bowl, on May 20th, 1995. And the story behind it is a really beautiful tribute from Brian to Jerry and how he, just really sang to his heart. So everybody enjoy this day, and let's tip our hat to Jerry's 74th birthday and enjoy the podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Well, today I am very excited. I am welcoming Happycat from Deadheadland, a.k.a. Brian Markovitz, who is well known by every one of you listeners. And welcome.
Hi. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us at Strangers Stopping Strangers. I'm so excited to have you on and to hear your stories. And we pick some songs and
well, glad to be here. And yeah.
So let's start a little bit at the beginning. I want to start a little bit at the beginning of your, you getting on the bus, and then we're going to go into the beginning of Deadheadland and play some tunes. So tell me a little bit about how it all got started for you.
All right. Well, I unlike many Deadheads, did not have people around me playing the music. My older brother turned me on to Frank Zappa and John Coltrane and all sorts of great music, but Grateful Dead wasn't in our home. None of my friends at school listened to Grateful Dead. I knew this group of weird hippie kids when I was in high school in the late 70s, and I realized now that, those were the Deadheads, but I was so socially far removed from them that I wasn't exposed to it, so all I knew of the Grateful Dead was the radio songs. I knew Casey Jones, and actually in the late 70s, Alabama Getaway was played on the radio a little bit. And, a couple of songs, but it wasn't in my genre. And I was more of a punk rocker kid. I liked the Ramones and Blondie and Talking Heads and, the early new wave punk rock stuff, etc. So, bump up 5 years to 82 or so, and I was going to the US Festival in San Bernardino, California, and I was going to this festival because it seemed like, my chance to have a Woodstock experience. And also, the first day was all the bands I was into. It was the Talking Heads, it was the Ramones, it was Oingo Boingo, B-52s, the Police. I mean, it was just this amazing lineup of bands kind of from that direction. And the third day was more of the second day was classic rock. That was Pat Benatar, Tom Petty, Santana. And then the third day was a little bit more eclectic with more of a kind of a country, homey California rock feel. And it started at 9 a.m. with what they called Breakfast in Bed with the Grateful Dead. Actually, Phil Lesh said that. And that was my first Dead show, and it was completely by accident. And I'm this funny little punk rock kid with short, spiky hair and spiked wristbands and a leather jacket. And went to my first Grateful Dead show because we were at this festival at 9 in the morning. So it wasn't my plan, but by the end, they played 2 full sets. And by the end of the 2 full sets, I was like, wow, these guys are great. I'd really like to see this band again. So that was I went to see the Ramones and ended up leaving really into the Grateful Dead. I don't know if I was a Deadhead just yet, but I had seen them, the seeds were planted, and it took me a few years to kind of fully get on the bus, I think. But okay, so that's where I started.
And I'm music. I mean, I don't trust somebody who's not into music. I mean, when somebody's into music, even if it's not the same music as me, there's a few exceptions out there, and I won't offend anyone by what I cannot digest, but a lot of music and a lot of genres, and, really, any rock and roll, if somebody's into it, it's all good, whatever is, feeding your soul.
Well, that's the way I looked at it. And actually, I remember at the time I was really into music. I went to concerts all the time. I still do. I went to see live music 4 or 5 times a week back then, and pretty much continued that for most of my life, I think. But I would always look for once I got past like the kind of teenage, like this is cool, that's not cool, which kind of came along with, you know, certain genres and stuff, really just, I looked for things that felt right to me and felt really authentic. Like, okay, there is something alive here and happening, and there's a powerful energy. My day job right now is I'm a massage therapist, so which is kind of like a different direction, although that was inspired by the Grateful Dead. But to me, there's, I would say in those terms, or the kind of new agey health terms, there's a lot of chi there. You know, I'm looking for something that there's just this like ball of energy in the middle. And so I would look for bands not because they were popular, or enjoy bands not because they're popular, but because there's some burst of energy there. And usually that burst of energy was in the live show more than on the record, or they would take what was on the record and just really explode it on the live show. Whether for the bands that I was into at the time, whether it was The Clash or Devo or whatever, there would always be such an intensity at some point in the live show, maybe just for a brief moment, sometimes some bands for a longer period of time throughout the show, that it would just, I don't know, it would get me high, it would excite me, it would be something really just fantastic about it. So when I went to my first Dead show, first off, I remember dancing with the Deadheads at the festival, and I go, oh, this is kind of like slam dancing without hitting each other. You know, it was wild, it was free form, we had so much fun, so we were fully committed into it. And then I just remembered, wow, the energy just like, it's right there. It's that great rock and roll energy I'm always looking for, and they're sustaining it throughout the whole show. And maybe that was because of the Deadheads and how much they poured into it and the dancing and the fun we were having. But something for it just clicked with me on that level. Beyond, you know, again, ideas of whether it's cool or not, or what the music was technically, or what genre it was. It's just like, wow, there's this vibrancy, this live energy here. So I think that was what first hooked me in, before I knew any of the songs, before I knew the culture or any of that. So
I couldn't agree more. And quite honestly, there is nothing out there like a Dead show. I mean, the energy that goes on is, you can't explain it until you go there. And it's that, you know, I know there's a lot of, you know, Jerry has said a lot about how we didn't make the music, we just bring it to you, you know, that it's collaborative with the crowds. And it's just impossible to explain to people who, you know, don't love it and aren't there. And I don't think very many of those people are listening to the podcast. So I think we're all in, right?
Yeah. You know, what's always funny is to me, people back then or even now who think, oh, you're into the Grateful Dead thing, and isn't that kind of like a 60s nostalgia thing? And even as much nostalgia was piled on the Fare Thee Well last year, I think what really made it work in the moments that were the strongest was like, no, we're all here again. There's this live energy we're putting into it, the band's putting into it, the music is taking us to a place that you don't experience anywhere else. Although that show did have tons of nostalgia and such piled upon it, but it's that, and if it wasn't live and happening right now, I wouldn't be doing it. You know, I wouldn't go see Dead and Company or Phil Lesh and Friends or et cetera, if there wasn't something really vibrant to it. If it was just a bunch of sad people reliving the hits and remembering our memories, I'd be done with it. Time to move on to something else.
I totally agree, and I'm curious and hopeful about what's going to happen, you know, because it's just been such a good ride, you know, the last year or so, and I'm open to whatever direction it takes, as long as it has, to your point, you know, the vibrancy and the meaningful and the people and the spirit, you know, because we don't know what's going to happen next, but as long as that's in, I'm in, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's play some music, because I love to, you know, we want to talk, but I know people want to hear some tunes, and then we'll come back and talk after. So on the first, so in reference to the first show, we are going to play from the US Festival that was on the 5th of September, 1982. We're going to bust out Women Are Smarter. And tell me a little why you picked that, and then we'll go into it.
Well, for one, because I just think it's a fun song. It puts everybody in a good mood. When I first saw the Grateful Dead, it was such a journey of discovery for me, and everything was a surprise. When I heard this song, it cracked me up because I knew the song, but I didn't know the Harry Belafonte version. I also used to watch a lot of TV as a kid in the 70s growing up, and I remembered it from Ricky Ricardo on the I Love Lucy show. And so I just remember just laughing so hard, but then remembering how fun it was. How it was like, wow, that song just got everybody dancing and they were so into it. And then even just the, you know, the pro-woman movement message in it, you know, I was like, yeah, that's great. It's a positive, it's an upbeat, it's and even though it seemed at first like, wow, a novelty song, there was like power and energy in them doing it. So, and it was fun. Above all else, it was fun.
I of course love the song, and I'll just add in before I play my little story that goes with the song up to last week. This is the song when it's coming on that I love to blast in the car when I have my son and my daughter and say, "Hey Julia, this one's for us." And so that's always fun and makes my son a little grumpy, and then her and I sing it out together. So a little family ride going on, but yeah. I've been well in our car, so always a fun one with everyone around. So all right, well we're going to go into this, and then we will be back to hear a little bit more stories and a couple more tunes. from Women Are Smarter, and I hope everyone is enjoying and tapping their foot and dancing a little jig right now. I'm sure they are.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. So I want to talk about kind of the origins of Deadheadland. Tell me a little bit about your experience that led you in that direction.
All right. Well, what's now basically a website and a channel on Facebook and Instagram, social media outlets and stuff of mix of information of about the dead and dead related music, as well as it's somewhat personal because it's like if I go to a show, I cover it. So I've covered non-dead things. If I see Springsteen, I post about Springsteen. So it's kind of my personal music blog, but with a Grateful Dead influence and a Deadhead perspective on whatever I see. And it's probably about 95% Grateful Dead related music and such. But it started off as a T-shirt, as a parking lot T-shirt back in the late 80s, early 90s. People did a lot of stuff that was kind of satire, kind of merging Grateful Dead with like regular world and stuff. And me and my partner at the time, my ex-wife, we used to vend at shows. Once we got into the Grateful Dead thing, we just go, oh, we can make cute little crafty things and people buy them. And it was almost more fun. It made us part of the circus rather than just people who went to the circus. So we used to do that, and we were at this Jerry Garcia band run in late 1990 at the Wiltern Theater in L.A. Jerry was playing a 5-night run, and played 2 shows. I think took the Wednesday off, or maybe the Thursday off. I think it was the Wednesday, and then came back and played 3 shows, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or something like that. And so we're back after the day off, and we're sitting in the parking lot, doing parking lot kind of activities with people, sitting around in a circle, cracking jokes, laughing and partying, and somebody comes by and tells us this story about bumping into Jerry Garcia at Disneyland yesterday. And we're like, no way, man, no way, that didn't happen. And as we're talking about it, we go, well, you know, he's got a little kid who is someone I now know as an adult, Keelan, but he had a little baby at the time. That was all we knew. And we're like, well, maybe that makes sense. Maybe he had a day off. He's a dad. He took the kid to Disneyland. I've never actually asked Keelan, but I'm assuming that is a true story. And I have seen photos of Jerry at Disneyland, so I think that that's authentic. Anyways, we ran with that, and that inspired our idea, Deadheadland. We just started cracking jokes about Jerry at Disneyland, and me and my wife, ex-wife, were Disney fanatics ourselves, so we kind of came up with this joke, Deadheadland, and then started making jokes about the rides. So we had Dark Star Tours and Drums in Space Mountain and Fire on the Matterhorn. So part of it is just my own satiric sense of humor. I like to make puns, and I see puns everywhere, and word plays and plays on ideas and visual ideas. And also we were, like I said, parking lot vendors, so we wanted to come up with an idea for a T-shirt that we could sell in the parking lot, or some new idea always. So that was the genesis of it. Sold a T-shirt for a few years, stopped selling a T-shirt. We eventually divorced, went our own ways. But I held on to the name, and I bought a website domain, deadheadland.com, and over 10 years maybe posted a joke or 2 on it, but never really did much with it. And then suddenly in the late 80s at a High Sierra Music Festival, I was talking with a friend of mine who I just met at the time, actually, but Andy Goodile of who invented Jam Bass, but also ran this fish page, Andy's Fish page, which was just a fish information page. But me being a deadhead that didn't know much about fish, I learned about fish from his page. And I just suddenly had this moment of inspiration to do something like that for deadheads. And I'm like, oh, I own this deadheadland.com. So it was partially inspired by Jam Bass and by Andy's Fish page. But then I didn't do anything. And then in 2009, suddenly both Fish and the Dead both reformed and started touring, and Fish started using Twitter. It was their fault. They started using Twitter to post set lists, and the light bulb went off again, and I'm like, oh, I need to do this for the Deadheads. And so I started doing Deadheadland on Twitter and Facebook and eventually Instagram, and posting set lists. And from 2009, from the start of the Dead reunion tour into the beginnings of Further, through the end of Further, into Dead and Company, lots of Phil Lesh and friends all through that, Rat Dog, etc. I just started posting not only set lists, but live song-by-song playlists. The band would play a song, and as they were playing it live, I'd post that to Twitter and to Facebook, etc. And that was my thing for years. I don't always do the live song-by-song anymore now, unless I'm actually at the show myself. But I still post set lists as much as I possibly can. I try to get all the Dead and Company. I try to get all the Phil Esch and Friends. I try to get anything the Core 4 do. I'm really good at getting Bobby at all these random times he sits in around the Bay Area. I just happen to be there. So staying up on the most current Grateful Dead news is kind of what Deadheadland has become. So again, it started from a T-shirt, but it kind of became this news service. And now I've got this large blog with a lot of people that follow it and a lot of people that follow it on social media. And I work full-time now. I've got all sorts of other things I do, but I do my best to keep up on it. I never missed a further show in terms of posting it. I didn't go to every one myself. I try to get all the Phil and Friends stuff, and even though I live in Marin, Phil plays too damn much. No, he doesn't. God bless him. I hope he plays forever. But he plays so many shows, and there's so many things at his venue that I can't keep up on all the set lists. And I'm trying my best to keep up with all the Dead and Company. I think there might be one or two set lists this tour I haven't posted. But of course, there's a show coming up where at the end of the summer tour. So I guess there's a couple more shows coming up, and I'll stay up on those and probably be at them. So that's kind of, wow, that's the shortest I've ever told the story, but that's Deadheadland, the evolution of it, where it came from, and
awesome.
It's probably more than you wanted to know.
Oh, no, I mean, I wanted to know it, and I think everyone wants to know it. And again, I think we found each other on Twitter, and then on Facebook, and then maybe on Instagram. So it's fun hearing, I've seen, the sites and the posting and your tagline that you're getting set lists for Hungry Deadheads since, 19...
Fresh hot set lists for Hungry Deadheads since the late 1950s, at least.
There you go. I've read it, I've seen it, and I am interested in it. So, okay, well, I want to go into some more music. So what do we think? Should we go with the Don't Let Go? We're going to play, we're going to hunt down this Jerry song. Don't have the MP3 yet, but I'm feeling confident I'm going to have it. So let's play something from, the origin of that day.
Right, so yes, those Wiltern shows in Los Angeles, so that I remember is I think one or two of them, Jerry closed his second set with a Don't Let Go. And again, just the level of intensity that he would play with and build with at that song was unlike anything I would experience anywhere else in my life. And it was always, Jerry was always great, Jerry Garcia Band shows, and he was always a lot of intensity throughout the show, but whatever his final song was, there would always be just this level of intensity that the vibration of everything in the building went to a higher level. And I remember specifically during the Don't Let Go that it's just like, wow, just blew me away. So Don't Let Go, Jerry Garcia Band from the Wiltern in 1990.
Let's enjoy.
Till it's 6 o'clock. Don't let go, don't let go. Come on, baby, it's time to rock. Don't let go, don't let go. I'm so happy to have you here. Don't let go, don't let go. Keeps me grinning from ear to ear. Don't let go, don't let go. Ooh, this feeling's killing me. Shucks, I won't stop for a million months. I love you so. I just hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. The lightning, wind, and rain. Don't let go, don't let go. Love's buzzing inside my brain. Don't let go, don't let go. I think, baby, I'll never stay. Don't let go, don't let go. You'll kiss kissing some other man. Don't let go, don't let go. Ooh, this feeling's killing me. Oh, shucks, I won't stop for $1,000,000. I love you so. I just hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hound dog barking upside the hill. Don't let go, don't let go. Love is dragging him through the mill. Don't let go, don't let go. I say, baby, I'll never get. Don't let go, don't let go. Your lips kissing some other man. Don't let go, don't let go. Oh, this feeling's killing me. Oh, shucks, I won't stop for $1,000,000. I love you so. But just hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Hold me tight and don't let go. Don't let go, don't let go. Don't let go.
And we talked a bit about the Deadheadland and the connection and really, I mean, a Dead show is Disneyland for adults. I mean, what other place are there, the balloons and the glow sticks and the beach balls. And I mean, it's the ultimate party. So, I mean, the connection is so visual and not lost on me. But let's talk a little bit about a couple of those rides, and then we're going to go on one of those rides.
Okay, great. Yeah, for me, what it always was, I mean, we did it because it's the two things we loved the most, Grateful Dead, and we loved Disneyland, Disney freaks in a certain sense. And but what I've realized over the years is the reason people connect to the idea so much is these are two things that really attack the deep pleasure centers of our brains and our lives and make us feel so good. part of where Disneyland gets you is in that place, and that's where the Grateful Dead gets you. And even though like they seem like they're opposite ends of the spectrum, there's a lot of overlap there. And so we just kind of expressed our love for both in the overlap. And so to us, each of the songs were a ride. And again, I like puns, so one of our puns was the Fire on the Matterhorn, rather than Fire on the Mountain, Fire on the Matterhorn as a ride. So here we go with the Fire on the Matterhorn, I guess.
Well, you know what? I think we're going to do Scarlet, Begonias, Fire on the Mountain Horn. So we're going to do Fire on the Mountain, but we're adding some Scarlet. I think we wanted to add that in because, we just heard Fire on the Mountain at Fenway all on its own, which was tremendous, which is awesome. But everybody loves a good Scarlet Fire. And being strangers stopping strangers, I can never pass up an opportunity to throw some Scarlet Begonias in. So
there you go. Perfect. And back in the day, they never did them apart. That's more of a more recent occurrence. That they're separated.
Yeah, let's be traditional. We're going to go to Cal Expo in 1989 and play the Scarlet Fire on the Matterhorn. And, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they are both the happiest place on earth, right? The Dead Show?
Absolutely.
The happiest place on earth. All right, well, here we go. Everybody enjoy Scarlet Begonias into Fire on the Matterhorn at Cal Expo 1989. everyone, from Scarlet, Begonias, Fire on the Matterhorn. So much fun. We're going to talk for a few more minutes and play one more song. And let's get into the first song you mentioned when we talked about talking. So, Happycat, tell me a little bit about that.
Morning Dew is a song that just over the years has really become like a deeply meaningful and resonant song in my life in a lot of ways. But the Morning Dew that for me, that I witnessed live, that stood out for me the most, was actually near the end of the Grateful Dead's tenure at the Vegas 95 show. I believe it was maybe the Saturday night or the Sunday night. I'm not always good on that preciseness, but I do remember that Morning Dew just completely blew me away. It was just, there was a depth and beauty to Jerry's playing, and I remember just like dancing, but also in some ways just kind of sitting back while I was dancing and just breathing with the beat and being deeply with the music. And for me, that was maybe my deepest Grateful Dead experience, where I felt so one with the band and with everybody else in the stadium. And it was all the way in the back of the stadium. And Sam Boyd Silver Bowl, for people who went to those shows, was a lot of people. That was a huge stadium. I remember it was all the way back, maybe not all the way up top, but, you know, up one level and dancing with people, and I can even visualize the people I was dancing with, and I remember that this was it. This is the moment. This was the deepest, most connected Grateful Dead moment I can remember in my life, and I carried that with me, I mean, really to this day, but I remember very intensely that I still felt how I felt in that moment for like days, maybe even weeks after that show. And of course that was leading into the end, and I saw the Dead maybe 6 more times their Cal Expo run and a Shoreline run, and then that was that for the West Coast. And of course, you know, we all know the last show is July 9th of that year. But no premonition that the end was coming or anything, but I just remember that being so deeply beautiful and intense. And I've since then had some ridiculous from some friends that really your favorite Morning Dew is from 95, because there's so many epic Morning Dews from way before that, and 95 is generally not regarded as anybody's favorite year. But regardless of anything, there were some really amazing moments during 95, and I think that Morning Dew for me was perhaps my favorite Grateful Dead moment ever.
Well, I think we meditate at the concerts. I mean, I know I meditate at the concerts, and I know that a song that means something one time I hear it will mean something totally different the next time I hear it, just because the lyrics transcend your life and where you're at in your life and what's going on. And so when you hear something, you know, it means one thing, and then when you hear it a couple of years or even a couple months later, it can mean something totally different. So, I mean, I've been really noticing that more now than when I was a teenager, because I don't think I had as much, as much meaning in my life at that time. But it's all about the meditation and the moment, and you feel like they're singing to you and get something out of it. And it's really special. I mean, it's a band beyond description.
Absolutely. And I know it's a corny, deadhead, goofy thing to say, but I never felt so connected to Jerry as I did during his solos in that Morning Dew. So while we listen to that, maybe if everybody just really stop what you're doing and take a moment, just really, really be with this Morning Dew and really listen to it.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to play it, and everybody enjoy. So welcome back from Morning Dew. I'm sure everybody is feeling that deeply in their bones, and I mean, just so beautiful, and just haunting, really. I want to just sign off and say thank you. I mean, thank you, Happycat Brian, for joining, and you definitely, have so many people that follow you, and I'm excited that some of your followers on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are tuning in to hear the story behind the man.
Well, I'm really honored to be here, part of your show, and this is very fun for me. Look forward to hearing it and listening to it again. And this is great. And since I'm on the air or on the pods, whatever you call it, to all the people that follow me and everything, it's great. It just makes me so happy. When I started doing the set list thing, it was for 30 people who I actually knew in real life, but it's grown to over 100,000 on Facebook, and I've lost count on Twitter and Instagram. But and a lot of people who I've met through this have become deep personal friends of mine. So it's more than just I'm shouting out to the masses. It's met people. It's changed my life. I know a couple that met on Deadheadland and have a baby, and that's just like the most amazing thing. So it's my honor and pleasure to keep doing all this. So Deadheadland on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, coming soon to a social media network near you.
That's awesome. Well, I enjoyed it. I know everybody enjoys it. And it's a community, I mean, and this podcast is from the community, for the community, and so are you. So it's always love to tie things up full circle. And everybody just keep listening, keep looking, keep listening, keep commenting, keep checking in, and keep on dancing.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Sky was yellow and the sun was blue. Changes, stopping strangers, just a shake of hands. everybody's playing in the heart of Golden Land, heart of Golden Land.